I really enjoyed watching the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games this summer. Of course, they were delayed by 12 months because of the COVID coronavirus pandemic, but nonetheless, we finally got a chance to enjoy sporting excellence. So there's a number of lessons which I picked up from watching the Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, and not just the athletes, but the way the things were organised. And I think there's 5 principles that we can take from those games and use within our industry to help us succeed within our career and ultimately succeed with our life as well. So the first principle is the principle of getting there is just the start. So if you think about the athletes who were at the Olympic Games, they're absolutely delighted to be there. They fought off competition from their national competitors. They had to qualify to get to the Olympics. So in their country, they are the best of the best. And in many cases, they're the best in their continent. And in some cases, they are the best in the world. But regardless of who they are, and as proud as they were of walking out into the opening ceremony, into the main stadium, they were not there just to make up the numbers. All athletes, every single one of them who got there, regardless of their circumstances and regardless of the journey, are all there to win. Now, of course, some people are not likely to win and others are more likely to win, the more favourites. But nonetheless, the mindset of every person who's there is, I'm not here to make up the numbers. I'm not here just to spend 2 weeks under the limelight. I'm really here to come and win. So they're fighting a battle not only against other competitors but against themselves. Each one of them wants to do the best that they've ever done, first of all, and hopefully that will be good enough to beat other competitors as well, and in some cases be good enough to beat every single competitor and get onto the podium and win some medals. So there you go. So we can take that principle as well going forward into our careers as well. So getting a role within an investment bank is superb. It's a prestigious appointment if you get that. You're very lucky if you get to work in an investment bank, whether that be from university or maybe you've switched careers or switched industries later on in life, or even if you just switched jobs and firms within the industry and you've got a new role. Getting to that new role is only just the start. Everything you've done so far has got you into the role, your qualifications, your experiences, your insights, etc. But really, you start again going forward. And that should be the way it should be, because if you think about an athlete as well, qualifying for the Olympics, even if you're Usain Bolt or another big star, it doesn't matter. You've got to do the work and get through the heats, get into the finals, and then do the work again and beat your other competitors who are around you. So that's the point. Getting there is just the start. And I remember when I first joined the investment banking industry, so it was Citibank back in 1996, so 25 odd years ago, and I was super excited. It was a dream fulfilled. My parents were very proud of me. I was very proud of me, and it was something that I didn't believe would happen to me. I hadn't thought about working in the city and working for a bank. It was like, oh, who am I? I'm not good enough to do that. That's not for people like me. And yet I pursued the opportunity and got in. And yet I'd start again. As good as I was in terms of my skill set, it was like learning a brand new game, effectively. New environment, new industry, new way of doing things. Everything was totally brand new. So yeah, I soon realised that it was literally, let's start again. Everything's very competitive. Banking is ultra competitive, as you know. The level of forgiveness is not very high in some cases. So you've got to be on your toes and do the very, very best you can. And yet, 25 years on into my banking career, I still have that mindset of, it's just the beginning. I don't want to rest on my laurels, because as we've seen, everything changes. Technology changes every single year, so the way we do things in banking has definitely changed in the last 25 years. We've had a couple of financial crises, I should say, 3 in fact, or 4, I can't remember, but that has meant the regulators have now said, okay guys, you need to do things a bit differently. So we continuously have to start again and evolve and adapt, and take on that beginner's mindset of how can I do the best that I possibly can do here. So there you go. That's principle number one. Just like the athletes have done and will do going forward, wherever you are now is just the start, and there's a long way to go, and that's a good thing. It's not a tortuous journey. It's like, yeah, there's something exciting for me to conquer, my new next Mount Everest. That's the way I would look at it. Okay, so that's principle number one. Principle number two that we can take from the Olympians and use ourselves within the banking industry is the principle that the challenge is the way. What do I mean by that? Because that seemed a bit abstract. So our industry is definitely challenging. We have regulatory pressures because our industry basically has to survive, otherwise the rest of the world collapses. And we saw that to some extent in 2008, 2009, when we had the credit crunch and a number of organisations fell by the wayside. The knock-on impact on the rest of the world's economy was unbelievable. So yeah, so we've got regulatory pressures, we've got competitive pressures. Whichever firm you work for, they're in competition with the other firms on the street, and even if you work for the market leader in your particular product or area, you're still in competition with the other incumbents. So that's important. We compete with people within our organisation as well. You know, we work in a meritocracy. The best get promoted and get the pay rises and get the opportunities. So there's a lot of competition there. So that's a challenge. And finally is competition within ourselves. We ourselves have challenging lives. We are trying to balance our work, trying to balance maybe home life, our health, our mindset, our mental health, and all of the other things we want to do in life, and we can and we choose to do in life. All of those are super important. So the combination of everything I've just said makes your life pretty challenging. I'm sure you can agree with that. If your life isn't challenging, then either you've aced it or you're sleepwalking into your retirement. So the challenge is the way, and the challenge is also the way through. The fight through the challenge is what's required. Now, if you think about it, you could take the easy option, except the easy option doesn't exist anymore because we've had automation, which has taken away a lot of the manual labour. Anything which is repetitive has been automated away, and anything which is not very specific and unique to you, in other words somebody else can do it, has also been taken away from you. Often it's gone to a lower cost of living location. You know, maybe your work has been outsourced to another country. So all of the easy stuff has actually gone. So you are now faced with working on challenging projects and solving complex, challenging requirements. And that's exactly what you want, actually, to be honest, because if you think about why people leave their role and maybe why you may have left your role, there's a number of things. Often it's you've left because the money's not been great, or you've left because your manager or your colleagues are not so great, so you're not enjoying it that way around. But more often than not, the main reason why people leave is they say, oh, I needed a new challenge, because human beings like to be challenged, especially people like us who are sort of quite highly educated and inquisitive and curious. We want to be doing better and better, so we do pursue challenging things. So that's that second principle. And you can also use these challenges to your advantage. So if you think about the Paralympic Games, the guys there, the things that they can do is absolutely unbelievable. You know, some of the wheelchair athletes, you know, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball, they can play a whole game like that, whereas most of us able-bodied people can't. We haven't got the strength, the tenacity, the energy to whiz around a court for quite a long time in a wheelchair. You know, think about how much strength and endurance you need for that. And we can take that analogy forward in our industry as well. There are people around you who will not face up to the challenge. They're just coasting along, keeping the head down and hoping they don't overly get noticed. Or the processes are so weak that they could get away with doing repetitive, boring work because things have been set up that someone's got to do it. But you can take advantage of this by putting your hand up and going for the most challenging projects, stretching yourself because other people have a fear of failure, so they won't go for it. So if you do that, you'll stand out and you will succeed, because if you design things properly, it will get done. You have nothing to fear, so you should go for that. And that's the principle number 2. The challenge is the way, and fighting through the challenge is the way forward as well. The third principle is that we can say from the Olympics is that behind every single gold medalist is solid rock. So what do I mean by that? I don't literally mean solid rock, but every single athlete at the games and also other elite sports people, they have coaches, guides and mentors behind them. They have to, for a number of reasons. So the coaches may have experienced the same circumstances as the athletes in a previous time frame. So that experience is super valuable. So if they can lean back on someone who's been through the emotions, been through the challenges, and rely on their experience to guide them, that's very helpful. Other coaches provide guidance in terms of nutrition, health, mindset, etc. That's also important. And you know what? The best athletes, they may not necessarily be the most talented, although talent is absolutely super important. Often the best athletes are the ones who are willing to look out for something new, work and learn, and are willing to listen to other people. You know, they're willing to drop the ego and take on this mindset of, can I learn something else from this? Is there a better way? Is there a different way? And they're the ones who you see just producing outstanding results at the Olympic Games and other sports and other competitions as well. And we see this more and more now in the corporate arena as well. Coaching started in the sports arena without a doubt, but coaching now exists everywhere else. Basically, this is a principle where you appoint somebody to help you, to challenge you, to hold you accountable, and mostly to make sure that they don't listen to your BS excuses. A coach will be non-judgmental and will say, we'll put you down when you're trying to just make an excuse and let you know how ridiculous it is that you're not going to go for it. So that's definitely something that I would take forward as a principle from the Athletic Games. I myself have had coaching for quite a few years, and it's certainly helped me in my life, sometimes in the actual work I've been doing within banking, but more than that, in terms of the person that I wanted to become and have become. I feel a lot more balanced, much more calmer. I've got work-life balance. The stresses and strains I had mid-career when things were just ultra busy, ultra competitive, too many things going on, most of those have now dissipated because I've managed to get control of my thinking. I think that's the way I would put it. So my coach has helped me with my way of thinking, and I strongly recommend you also do the same. Get somebody who challenges your thinking, because ultimately it's our thinking that defines our world and our experience of the world. And with better thinking, we can reframe things so they're better than they are. And also with better thinking, we can achieve more, because we know that some impossibilities are not really impossible. They're just possibilities which are not very clear. Principle number 4. So another principle that we can take from the Olympians and the Olympic Games is that high standards are absolutely everything. So this was definitely one aspect that caught my eye during the Tokyo Games. The attention to detail and the organisation was superb. You saw this straight away from the opening ceremonies. They were 3 or 4 hour long affairs, but everything was meticulously planned out and meticulously executed. You did not see a single flaw in what was taking place. And also during the games as well, as far as I could see, everything ran like clockwork. And this was despite the COVID restrictions, everyone having to be constantly tested, people were sort of distancing themselves, isolating themselves. So the logistics this time around were quite difficult, yet you would never have noticed, because the show that is the Olympics and the Paralympics was superb this time round. Definitely can't complain about that. So high standards are absolutely everything, and the lesson we learn in our industry is that high standards are absolutely everything as well. So if you think in terms of what we do within banking, it's really important to be right. You know, if you're calculating P&L or you're calculating risk measures, it's not good enough to just say, well, it's about right, because that can have a massive material impact in terms of your liquidity, the firm's reputation, what the regulator thinks, your collateral margin, etc., etc. Everything's got to be accurate and right and in a timely manner. And this can only happen if we have very, very high standards in terms of how we organise things within the bank and how we operate within the bank. So I would definitely take that forward as a principle. You yourself must operate at the highest level of standard that you can possibly do. This might mean you have to learn something new. It might mean that you have to unlearn what you do and unlearn how you do things and learn things in a different manner. So changing the processes and learning brand new things. And it's not only about our own standards. It's important for us to make sure that high standards are being held to everywhere. So if you think some of your colleagues are not quite doing the right thing, they may think they are because they're doing the best they possibly can with what they've got. But if you think it's not quite right, then it's not rude for you to say something and just say, look, have you thought about this, or can we do this in a different way? That's you taking overall holistic responsibility for the greater good of your team and your firm and your industry. So doing things right is super important. Doing things properly is super important. And it actually saves us a lot of money, time and effort as well, because if you do things right, first of all, then you don't have to redo things again. And doing things right doesn't just mean following a process and doing it right verbatim. It's actually defining the right process. So designing what needs to be done and why it should be done, making that clear as well is super important, and that all comes from super high standards. So again, we can go back to the Olympics. I loved what the Tokyo committee members did, the organisers there, and the show they put on there was better than what the Brazilians did in Rio, and that was even better than what the UK did in London 2012. So you can see there's a progress, there's an evolution. High standards are a goal to come from, not a goal to go to. You know, you can continuously improve and get better and better and better. I think there's a Japanese word, kaizen, that means continuous improvement. So there's a lesson we can learn there as well. So the fifth and last principle I want to share with you, which I took from the Olympic Games, is the principle of continuity. So if you think about this, think about the Olympic flame. It essentially never goes out. It starts off in Greece, because that's the source or the place of the first modern Olympic Games. Then the flame travels around the world and ultimately ends up at the host city, and it's kept lit throughout the entire Games. And think about that flame. It's passed from person to person to person all around the world, and then ultimately in the host city it's passed from person to person, street by street, and ultimately the Olympic cauldron is lit. So we can use that principle in terms of what we do. Everything you do in your career, in the bank you work for, or in the industry overall, if you've worked in different firms, it's about continuity. We, at the moment, who are working in the industry, are passing through. We are the current custodians and stewards of the firms we work for and of the overall industry. 30 years ago, other people were working in the industry, we weren't. And in 30 years' time, we'll stop working and other people will take over the stewardship of the industry. So we really are just passing through. And the principle of being a good custodian and a good steward is super, super important. So in the moment, you are sort of in the environment. It's your responsibility to do the best so that when you do leave, the next generation can carry on the good work and make progress. And again, we can go back to the Olympic Games. If you think about the 4x100 relay in the athletic stadium. There's four athletes have a baton, and they pass the baton from the first to the second to the third to the last leg. Now think about that in terms of what we do. At the moment, we're holding the baton of the industry. It was given to us by those that have now left and more senior to us, and then we'll pass it on to those that are more junior to us. So the principle of continuity, being a good steward, passing it on, leaving a legacy is very, very important. And this really resonates with me, leaving a legacy. So doing the best that we can so that the industry is better when we've left is really a great thing to aim for. Adopt the Olympic spirit. Think about the athletes. They go and do whatever they can. They overcome the odds, and they really make a great go of what they're trying to do. We can do the same. We are very lucky to have roles within the industry. If you think about your role, you had to fight against other applicants, and you were lucky enough to get it. Not lucky, you were talented enough to get it. And also, for your position, there's 100 people who are not in the industry who would love to have your job. They would love to do what you do. They would love to earn what you earn, and they would love to have the opportunities that you have. They'd love to have access to technology and innovation that we have. So think about that. We are like Olympians. We are standing in the Olympic stadium in many respects, and yet it's challenging, and we've got to go for it and make the most of it. So there you go. That's my 5 principles from the Olympic Games, which have enlightened me quite a lot and reminded me of why I think our industry is the best in the world. I hope you feel the same. Love to have your comments. Just comment below. Hope you've enjoyed this video. There's links to subscribe to my channel. I hope you will do that so that I can inform you of sort of future thoughts, and also there's a link to another video that you can watch. Hopefully you'll find that enjoyable. Yeah, love to have your comments, and all the best, and adopt the Olympic spirit.